welcome everybody. My name's Marnie and it's so lovely to have you here today with Frankston City Libraries and our Frank Talk with Pamela Watson. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which Frankston City Libraries operates, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that acknowledgement to any elders of any other Aboriginal communities who may be joining us today. I'd like to hand over to Pamela. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much, Marnie. It's great to be here. Lovely to see, or not see everybody, but I'll hear from you very soon, I think. I'm going to tell you today about my two big solo adventures. I undertook challenges that were exhilarating, that were intense, yet very, very different. And my first challenge was in my book, Esprit de Batuta, Alone Across Africa on a Bicycle, and the second in Gibbous Moon over Lagos, Pursuing a Dream on Africa's Wild Side. And I thought, both, although different, both are about Africa, and everybody loves stories out of Africa. So I'm really going to skim right through both and give you a little bit of insight into how it all started. So, Esprit de Batuta was 1992 to 1994. So it's a while ago. And I was living in London. And that adventure ultimately was 14,500 kilometres of cycling from Dakar in Senegal to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. I went through 17 countries for 18 months. So you'd think that I'd have to be some pretty tough chick to be able to do that kind of thing. Well, I'm going to start a slideshow to give you some photos which you don't get in the books to help you see exactly what kind of a person I was and what sort of a person I became through my journey. So I'll just share my screen. Open up the PowerPoint. Right, can I check that everybody can see that now? Yes, excellent. Okay, so this is rolling back in time to 1992. What a neat person. Look at that hair, my goodness. This bicycle was a bicycle that I cycled in London on. It was my commuter bike. And those panniers used to have my files and my business suit in it as I headed off to work. But I'd had this hankering to be in Africa. It started really here. I'm in Perth in Western Australia, and every night watching the sun go down when I was a kid, I knew it was travelling to Africa. And I was in my early 30s, and I thought, what happened to that person who wanted big adventure in Africa? So I decided to do it. Well, can you imagine announcing to your boss, to your friends, that you're going to cycle across Africa when you've got zero experience and you look like this? What was their reaction? They said to me, "You're going to die," which wasn't exactly really reassuring for me. I had to sort of dig in deep and say, well, this is what I wanted to do. Well, here's another photo. Oops, sorry. Right, this photo is taken about 12 months into my journey in Africa, and I'm top to toe in red dust. And in fact, I've got red dust in my lungs. But you can see from the smile on my face that by now I'm really having the time of my life. Not every day is good, but I'm exhilarated by fulfilling my dream. Well, it didn't start out that way. I started off as that clean person, and then I hit Africa. Oh my God, what have I done? This is in the Republic of Guinea. It's within the first 1,000 kilometres, the first month of my journey. And in the Republic of Guinea, roads had not been made for 30 years. So they were back to rubble, like on the right-hand side, or they were slippery gravel like that central picture. And there were no bridges, so I had to wait for barks to come to be able to embark my very heavy bike. You can see how much gear I've got on this bike. And I was doing it tough, and I really was thinking, what have I done? Is this the right thing? And some of the difficulties were not just the roads. It was also the fact that I was the centre of attention. I was mobbed everywhere I went, into villages, all the kids crowding to want to see me. I mean, quite sweet, but really intimidating when you're by yourself. Well, you look at this picture and you can understand why they're looking at me. Strange outfit indeed. Well, the difficulty I was facing there was I was in very dry bushland, very, very hot, but tsetse flies everywhere. And I put on all the clothes I had, including this really quite delightful Africa outfit that I had made by a local tailor. And I had shorts and T-shirts, everything underneath that and layers, because the tsetse flies could bite through the layers and they could get in behind the scarf and be biting my neck and my ears. I was being driven crazy by these tsetse flies. So the animals were against me, the roads were against me, and I was having really a lot of difficulty with just the local culture. Well, in week 5, I'd got to the top of a mountain range, the Futa Jalon in the Republic of Guinea. And there was a hotel there. It's not the Ritz, but I decided to give myself a couple of days off, and it's the Hotel de la Sala in Larbe. So I parked my bike, went inside, and suddenly behind my left knee, there's pain. I look down and a dog has bitten me. There's white gooey stuff oozing out of a very large wound. Fortunately for me, I've got fat calves, and so it didn't get the muscle. But the owners of the hotel had to take me to the only doctors in town, some Chinese, and they immediately announced no cycling for 1 month. 1 month. I was 1 month into my journey. I sat at this hotel and was very depressed. This is during the period of recuperating from this dog bite. And I really thought after the healing of the wound that perhaps I'd be best off just cycling down to a junction, turning right for Conakry and flying home. But how was I possibly going to finish this journey with so many problems? Well, during that time, I got to know a young woman who worked at the hotel. And this is Françoise on the left here, helping me to prepare a meal. But one evening, I was drowning my sorrows with a bottle of beer, and she came up to me and she said, "Pamela, you know that it was a good spirit who made the dog bite you. A bad spirit was waiting further down the road to do something worse." Well, I'm not a great believer in spirits, but I knew there was a kernel of wisdom in what she was saying. And indeed, she went on and she said, "Go ahead more slowly and things will go better." And I adopted that wisdom of hers that she shared with me, and I went ahead more slowly and things did go better. These are just some photos from different parts of my journey. It's not that everything was always great. The roads were still difficult. I was still mobbed by children, but I embraced my life and I made many great friends, some just overnight in the stays when people kindly invited me to put my tent up in their village on their verandas, but also when I stayed longer and really formed some very deep friendships. And finally, I did make it to Dar es Salaam 18 months later, and my goodness, what a high it is to achieve a dream. I was floating on air. But what people don't talk about big challenges and achieving them is what happens afterwards. And I was really a little bit lost afterwards. You know, why had I put myself through so much? Because there is that re-entry problem. You're a bit culture shock with your own culture when you come back after such a long time being immersed elsewhere. Well, what I decided to do was to write a book. And so that is my first book, Esprit de Batuta, Alone Across Africa on a Bicycle, now out in its 3rd edition. It's updated. And actually writing the book was as much for me to process and understand what it was I'd learnt during that time. And a lot of it was, I really learned to respect the women of the villages of Africa. They truly are the backbone of Africa. But I also learned to trust myself and to trust the fact that this strange thing inside of me, which nobody else could understand, was that I wanted to spend my life in Africa. I felt that that is where I was comfortable and where I wanted to be. So roll forward 10 years, I was ready for another big adventure. And I was taking myself off to Africa full time. There was some other shorter adventures in Africa after the bike ride, but the next big one began in the country of Nigeria. Now, in Australia, I think not many people know a whole lot about Nigeria, and it may be that some of you who are listening in actually have worked there, because there are a number of Australians who do, but for tourism, it's not really a destination. It's West Africa. It's a very large country. It's the largest economy in Africa, and Lagos is its commercial capital, as you can see on the South Atlantic Ocean. I've lived in Lagos from 1999 to 2009, 10 years. And I went there to work, so it was a very different kind of adventure. I felt that I wanted to be able to give back, and giving back meant using my professional skills in entrepreneurship. So I'll just show you what I was doing. That's another picture of a fairly young me, and this is very early days when I'd set up my first enterprise, Strategy Works, my consultancy practice in Lagos. And this was how I made money to be able to live in Lagos, in order to spend the money on my passion. And my passion ended up being Ecologica Papers, a social enterprise that I formed. Lagos is a huge city and growing very fast, and people need employment. And so one of the objectives of setting up Ecologica Papers was to create employment for underprivileged Lagosians and those without many skills. And another objective was to help the environment. So we were doing handmade paper. On the top right-hand picture, you can see sacks of shredded office paper that we collected from offices in Lagos. On the top left is a Hollander beater, which we used to create the pulp. The bottom left is one of my workers who is holding a decal and mould, which he has dipped into the blue bowl, which would have had pulp suspended in water. He dips it in, lifts it up, and all that water that's dripping out is leaving behind the sheet of paper in the mould, which is then pressed out, dried, and we made those reams of paper, which are on the bottom right. That's our raw paper. These are some samples. We didn't just have one recipe. We had many different recipes, all top secret. The one on the left is full fibre paper, not made with recycled shredded paper, embedded with tropical flowers. And the one on the right is a paper we called Fulani paper. And it actually contained the dung of the long-horned white cattle that the Fulani nomadic traders brought to Lagos. And that one was really, really popular. It was our bestseller. So what did we do with this paper? We made cards, we made ring-bound notebooks, and we also, I've got something here to show you, we made these little desktop calendars. The notebooks and the calendars were probably our best sellers. And this particular one, dated from 2007, you might be able to see has a Nigerian hand and an Australian hand holding each other, and it's called Australia Nigeria United. And this was produced by, this particular image was a Nigerian child in Lagos, but it was part of a competition that I held between Nigerian and Australian school children to come up with drawings that represented Australia and Nigeria united. And the reason I did this was because I had another role, which was that I was the honorary consul for Australia in Lagos. And as well as this competition, I held events for Anzac Day, and this is the very first Australia Day beach party that I held in Lagos. And you can see that it was bringing the Australian community and Nigerians together, and some great friendships and great fun was had at these events. So that was what I was doing. But you might be saying, well, what's the adventure in that? You could have been setting up enterprises in Australia. So, you know, where's the adventure? Well, one of the first aspects of the adventure of Lagos is its scale, about how big it is. So this is a map of Lagos state. And the central portion of that is really where all the population lives. And you can also see all the waterways. It's a very, there are a lot of waterways in Lagos state. But to give you an idea, I think, you know, people who are listening today are primarily Australians, I think, who will know the Gold Coast. Yeah, so you've got an image of the Gold Coast. Take the population of Australia, put it in the Gold Coast, and that's Lagos. It's 20 million people living in about 1,400 square kilometres. And this is what it looks like from the air. People packed in. It's very, very densely populated. This is on what we call the mainland, where the bulk of the population lives. This is downtown on Lagos Island, and this is the commercial heart, the original commercial heart, looking across to Tinkan Island. So you can see that it's a very substantial city, and in fact there's a whole other commercial heart on Victoria Island. And so, but the size of Lagos made it exciting because you really felt that you could make a difference. There's huge potential to do things in an environment where there's a big market and where there's so many needs. But the other part of the adventure is that it's challenging, that it's hard to get things done. And these images illustrate just one of the problems of trying to get things done in Lagos, and it's traffic. And the authorities trying to build the infrastructure to cope with a city that's growing very fast have their hands cut out for them. So it's not just a failure of government to invest. It's just that there's just so many people every day trying to commute to go places. In Lagos, we talk about getting stuck in go-slows. And go-slows, like in Australia, you get caught in the traffic jam during rush hour, and it might be a half an hour to an hour that you're late getting home. In Nigeria, the go-slows are 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours in length. They totally wreck your day. And this is just one of the challenges that you're facing in Lagos. The environment is such that it's a roller coaster. On some days you feel like you're achieving a lot, that you're working for these big problems in an exhilarating environment, and on other days you're dashed down because you can't get anything done. And there's a saying in Lagos about everyone works hard, but nothing was achieved. And you really do have to work hard, and little by little, just like on a bicycle journey, you can get to your destination. But it takes a big personal toll. And here's another image. This is at Agadja Beach, which is down the lagoon. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. And this is my beach hut. And this was where I went to de-stress on just about every Sunday when I could in Lagos. And I took my friends there. And a lot of the action in my book, or some of the pivotal moments, happen at this beach hut at Agadja Beach. It's a place that I'm really fond of. There's a limit, I think, to how much of the adventure I can really convey that happened in Lagos through pictures. And what I would like to do now is actually to escape out of the share screen, come back to you, and I thought what I would do is actually read a little section of my book. I'll give you an extract so that you get a flavour of a day in my life. And this particular extract is out of a chapter that's called Black Goats. It's near Christmas time and both businesses are really busy, but it's been quite a difficult day already. There was uproar outside. It must have been serious to travel up 2 stories and through glass windows. I jumped up, as much for a distraction as to check out what was going on. Downstairs, I saw a large black goat running loose in the car park with 3 of my team members chasing noisily after it. The lithe animal jumped nimbly onto the bumper of my CRV, then the bonnet, then up the windscreen onto the roof, as easily as if it were a pile of rocks in a Malian village. Though Peter, Sonny and Remy seemed to have him covered, my money was on the goat's ability to slip through this clumsy dragnet. I went to join them. "Why is a goat on my car?" I called to the perspiring team. "It's the goat for a gadger, madam," said Remy, whose sweat made him look as though he'd been swimming. "You said to get them food for the feast. We have a bag of rice as well." Tomorrow was the last Sunday before Christmas, and I decided I'd like to provide a special meal for the villagers at a gadger. It was my gift to them, as well as the 13th month's salary payment, a bonus which was traditionally expected. I'd spoken to my caretaker, Luke, who had suggested rice and meat, and I'd given money to Peter to get supplies. I'd expected something frozen and in pizzas. Now dinner was looking straight at me with appealing doe-like eyes. I had a soft spot for goats. Could I send him to the cooking pot? "Madam," shouted a voice from on high. I looked up and saw Gloria on the office balcony. "Madam, you have an international call," she said, "from London." "Catch the goat, guys," I instructed and dashed back to the stairs. "I'll think about his fate later." I returned to my office and Gloria put the call through to me. "Is that Pamela Watson?" said the voice. "Are you free to talk?" Now I was really worried. "It's about a payment on your credit card," continued the voice. She mentioned a sum of £2,000 and a payment to an online consumer electronics firm in the UK, a firm I'd never heard of. I was confused and a bit slow on the uptake. She repeated the details. "We wanted to check the transaction," she said. "It was flagged as potentially fraudulent." It was. I could hear rising, energy-filled voices and laughter coming from the offices outside. My teams were like my family. Had someone near me done this to me? Or was it an outsider? Like a virus being coughed into the air, spiraling up, waiting to be inhaled and to start its damage, her message brought terrible doubts. Was this attempted fraud perpetrated by one of my team? So that perhaps gives you a little bit of an insight into the ups and downs, which weren't just between days, but within one day. The fun, but also the worries that I was perpetually being confronted with as I struggled in my challenge of building my businesses and to survive. And it perhaps also gives you some insight into the mystery which is at the heart of Gibbous Moon over Lagos. In fact, there's a proverb at the beginning of that chapter which gives you even more of a clue. And that proverb, Nigerian proverb, is that black goats must be caught early before it gets dark. So the other thing is that gibbous moon, I don't know whether you know what a gibbous moon is. It's a waxing, well, it's a 3/4 moon, which can be waxing to full or waning back to the dark side. And so again, the mystery there is about, you know, what's happening to my life there, but also what's happening to Lagos, because it is a challenging place and people are working hard and they're really trying to make better lives for themselves and their children. And through my book, as well as taking you on the ride of my life in Lagos, is to help you get a better understanding of a very important part of contemporary Africa, part that we don't really know about and learn about too much here in Australia. So I think that's probably about all I want to say now. Other than that, both these books are solo adventures, and the common thread is that they involve taking on challenge. They were exhilarating for me. That both of them had people who were saying things that. Why would you want to do that? But, they were important to me. And I think from having done my first challenge, I came to trust myself and understand that, if it was important to me, that it resonated with me, and it was about expressing who I was. Gibbous Moon over Lagos is solo in that I was there for 10 years. But most of the action of this book is in the second 5 years after my partner, Alec, left. And I think that's something that I have learnt over the years, is that when one travels solo, the adventures are more intense, but they're really learningful. It's when you grow and change as a person. So, all to say, I hope that you will enjoy perhaps reading about my solo adventures, but very happy to now have some chat and perhaps hear about your plans for solo adventures or anything that you'd like to ask me about Africa. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Pamela. That was amazing. And I have to agree with you. I know we were discussing it off air before we let everyone in, just how good solo adventures are. And that you're planning out your own destiny. Like, no one else has a say in it, and you're doing exactly what's right for you at that particular time. Now, VB has just commented that they need to know what happened, so they've just ordered your book. So they want to know what happened with the credit card and what happened with the goat, and what an amazing person you are. And they do have a couple of questions. How long were you in Africa altogether, and how did you find returning to Australia?
Great questions. I'm a COVID refugee. I normally live in London, and I haven't lived in Australia since I left university. Oh, no, that's untrue. It was the mid-90s was the last time that I had a couple of years of living in Melbourne, actually, before I went back to London, because I felt that London was closer to Lagos, and I've continued to work and I have activities with Lagos, but from my base in London. I have been in and out of Africa since, I hate to say it, 1981, when I first travelled down the Nile. So my experience of Africa spans during the Cold War, when the Africa that I experienced going down the Nile was mainly communist, and certainly with no private sector, right through to my bicycle ride, which was in 92, 94, which is after the Cold War, and was when democracy and privatisation was happening, and it was just so much change happening. And then 99 to 2009 was when democracy started to bring a difference, and that the private sector was motoring, and more importantly, that mobile telecommunications arrived, and it brought a huge revolution to the lives of Africans, which is still unfolding. And I continue to, as I say, be involved with Nigeria and have adventures in Africa. So it's a pretty long time, and Africa has really changed, although I do get disappointed that it hasn't changed enough on some scores. Coming back to Australia has been great. I mean, I'm in Perth, which is my hometown. I haven't been through a winter in my hometown since I left. I've always timed my holidays to come back for the marvellous summer that we have here. But it's bringing back all sorts of memories from childhood. And it's also great to be here to reconnect with how Australia's changed. And I had a bit of a tough time in Australia in the 80s, being a businesswoman then. It wasn't particularly easy. So it's wonderful to come back and to sort of recalibrate my own impressions of Australia and how it is today.
Well, it's lovely to have you back. And Catherine has just asked, is there anything in particular you miss about living in Lagos?
I miss so much. I'd probably miss my friends the most, and Agaja Beach, number 2. That I formed very deep friendships in Lagos. When life is intense, and when I was on my own, people somehow gravitate to you. The people that you need at any particular point in your life, they somehow gravitate to you. And because you're going through tough times, the degree of friendship is that much deeper, and those friendships have continue to be important to me. And I just love Zoom. I'm having a Zoom call this afternoon with one of my friends in Lagos. We're doing a bit of business together for an NGO that I'm still a trustee of. And we've got great plans of actually creating a partnership with an Australian organisation. So this pandemic and being locked in has opened up some new opportunities. So, but yeah, like everybody, it's not quite the same as being there and being able to hug somebody. And then at Agaja Beach, I'm very close to the community that lives there. They're part of the poorer section of society. And as much as I loved having my beach hut there, I also am very close to the families and have watched them grow up, and continue to do a little bit to try and support them as I go through. So I can't wait to be able to go back to Agaja pretty soon.
And it's interesting you talk about your friends there as well, because it's a nice little segue into what I was going to ask you about the difference you feel between traveling as a solo female compared to traveling with companions. And have you found that you've actually developed deeper friendships as a result?
Thanks, Money. Yes. Look, when I first started out, that picture that I showed you of me with my bicycle and being totally naive about really what I was undertaking, it wasn't that I had planned to travel solo. It was just that I had this hankering to go to Africa. And I didn't have enough money for a 4-wheel drive, and as a bicycle seemed a practical solution. And people didn't want to go with me. And I don't think it was, my character. I think it was that people had different priorities. It wasn't their dream. So if I wanted to go for my dream, I had to do it solo. So it was an unintended consequence of just biting the bullet and saying, I'm going to do this. Having done it, yeah, it wasn't, I might say, it's not that I hadn't travelled solo, but travelling solo with a backpack was also different to travelling solo on a bicycle, because on a bicycle, I wasn't meeting up other Western travellers. I was meeting up the villagers. And at the beginning, we had this cultural disconnect. So on both kinds of travel, you do meet people when you're a solo female alone. And I think it probably happens to men as well. But people come and reach out and talk to you. And you do make great friendships. But on my bicycle ride and on my time in Lagos, it really was the local people that I formed the friendships with. And I feel really privileged that I got inside their lives and started to be able to see their life through them. And that's a really powerful thing that I've gained from travel. It gives me respect, but it means that I've had to question my own assumptions about so much, because we all don't see the life the same ways, and we don't experience it in the same ways. And it's really important to be able to put yourselves into the shoes of others. So, that's part of what I've got out of travelling solo.
Absolutely. Now, Jenny's just asked, in your book, Give Us Moon, there is a journalist who you meet that seems to have a preconceived idea of Nigeria and what life is like there. How do you reconcile the Nigeria you know with the one portrayed in the media?
That's a very thoughtful question. The reason I included that story, and it's true, was that I am frustrated by the way in which Nigeria is portrayed in the Western media, as to Nigerians and Nigerians, Australians, I know. And it's not only Nigeria, it's Africa. Africa, I don't think in Australia we really know it all. We know cliches. And the cliches can be violence, the cliches are impoverished and starving children, women needing tampons these days, young girls. Nigeria, the cliches there are about the corruption, about the email frauds that are perpetrated. On the one hand, which somehow portrays all Nigerians as somehow being participating in fraudulent and corrupt practices. And on the other hand, it's also, the cliche is about the oil and the devastation that's been wrought, and the situation down there, of which there always has to be a bad guy. Nigeria, I learned one of the things that I was told when I first arrived in Nigeria was to never take anything at face value. It's very, very complex. There's lots of alliances between people which you cannot see, and which, as an outsider, you really can't hope to get to understand. Some of it is tribe-based, but it can be based on so many different things. So there are no simple answers, and part of what you learn in being in Nigeria is its complexity, and to always be looking below the surface to try and understand what's really going on. And what frustrates me is that investigative journalists, journalists who are foreign correspondents, go for the easy story that falls into the cliches, rather than trying, through their skills as writers, to be able to portray the complexity. And it means that, yeah, there's not all good guys, there's also not all bad guys, and it's not all about poverty, and it's not also about greedy rich. There's a lot of grey and a lot of good news stories that just aren't told.
Now tell me, what was it that really sparked you to initially write your first story and get it down on paper, and then your entrepreneurial journey? What was it that you decided to put pen to paper?
Two things: frustration and being a bit lost. The frustration was that, you saw those pictures of the smile on my face. I'd completed this amazing thing, but I knew I'd completed it because the villages of Africa had welcomed me, that I had this story to tell. My heart was full with the hospitality and generosity that the people in the villages had given to me and made me safe, so that a woman alone could cross Africa. And I wanted to talk about it. I really wanted to talk about it. Well, I cycled into Dar es Salaam on the 7th of April, 1994, which was the day after the planes of the plane that was carrying the presidents of Rwanda and Burundi had been blown up on arrival in Kigali airport, and it sparked the Rwandan genocide. So the day I arrived into Dar es Salaam was a day of mourning, and there was no press coverage. Well, there never was any press coverage. There never was that opportunity to speak, because every journalist went for the story of the decade, of the century, flew to Kigali to cover this unfolding, despicable tragedy. And so it became really frustrating that I had a good news story about Africa that nobody wanted to hear. The second thing was this feeling of being lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. For 18 months, I just had to wake up, hop on my bike, do as many kilometers as I could, because I had that single goal to get to Dar es Salaam. And when it was all over, it was like, well, what was that all about? And I didn't want to just slip back to what I'd been doing, but equally I didn't know what it meant, and therefore how, people said to me, have you changed? And I couldn't see it. It was like, there weren't spots. It wasn't something real. Through writing a book, I both came to be able to tell the story of those villages, and particularly of the women, and it also helped me to process how this was so important to me, and it led me to, having written the book, make the choices that I did, which was to continue my life, taking my professional life into Africa. So that was that book. I think the second book came about almost through the same sort of process, that I left Lagos and this incredibly intense period of my life, deep friendships made, but a pretty, challenging journey that I'd been on. And I came out and I found that people were, talking in these cliches about Nigeria. And I wanted to be able to talk about, this place, which is such a rough diamond, but so exhilarating, and deserves to be better known. So really it's that desire to tell the story which has led me to write the books.
Once you'd written them, what was the reception from publishers? How did you go down on that journey to actually get that book onto shelves?
Each journey was different. With Esprit de Batuta, I told you I took a couple of years off in Australia in the mid-90s, and that was when I was writing the book. So I was submitting the manuscript from Australia to Australian publishers and to UK publishers. And I got many rejection letters. And but finally I did get a publisher in the UK who picked it up, who immediately said, well, of course it's got to be rewritten.
We hear that all the time.
But I flew back. Well, in fact, by the time that they picked it up, I was actually living in Accra in Ghana. I'd take myself to Accra. That's another story. But I then had to carve time out, do the rewriting, and the rest is history. With Gibbous Moon, of course, the publishing industry has changed entirely. And I found it a tougher sell because, it's a different kind of adventure. Classic adventure, woman alone on a bicycle. People say, oh, yes, that's interesting. Solo adventure in Africa's megacity, which is contemporary Africa. People said, well, I'm sure that's really interesting, Pamela, but, how many people really want to understand Lagos, Nigeria? And I thought about self-publishing for a while because the industry has changed. But the really interesting thing is that in 1999, when Esprit was published, it was the UK publisher who picked it up, but they sold the rights in Australia to Hardy Grant Books, and they were my Australian publisher. And good old Hardy Grant came and picked up my book for the Australian market, well, for Gibbous Moon. And so Hardy Grant is the publisher now of Gibbous Moon, not only in Australia, but also overseas, because now they've expanded overseas.
Oh, fantastic. Now, obviously at the moment we're all under restrictions and, we can't necessarily do what we want right now, but what is next for you? Once those restrictions lift, where is your journey taking you?
If the restrictions hadn't been on, I'd be in my Land Rover Defender driving to Lagos for the launch of Gibbous Moon over Lagos in Lagos, but also retracing some of my route in order to meet people in the villages that I met back in 92 to 94. That's an ambition that I still want to fulfill. It's clearly on hold, but and I think, there might actually be a book in it, because I really do wonder what's happened to these people. And I know they will remember me. And I fear some of them may be dead. But I fear that although lives have changed, they won't have changed as much as they might, particularly for the women. And so that's part of my goal. Look, Africa remains very strong in my future, and Nigeria in particular. So I help entrepreneurs in Nigeria to stress test their business plans. I know what can go wrong. I know the ups and downs. And so I try to bring my experience and my professional skills to helping them. But I'm particularly interested in social impact through business. And, it was the social enterprise, which was my real passion. And I don't think it has to only be social enterprise. Any business can really make a big difference in an environment like that. So this partnership that I'm forming between the NGO that I'm a trustee of in Nigeria and an Australian organisation, I'm hoping that might be a role model of some of the kinds of partnerships that I can help to create. Because I'd love Australia and Nigeria actually to be more closely connected. But adventure is me. That's at my heart, and solo adventure I'm so passionate about. So the thing that I really also want to do is to be able to help others to overcome their fear of going and undertaking those solo challenges of following their dreams. And in fact, what I'm hoping is that maybe if there's people who are listening in today who have got a big adventure in their head and it's sitting there and it won't go away, it's a voice in their ear, but there's something that's stopping them, I'd really love to hear from them about what's stopping them, because I'm hoping in the future to be able to form something, a course or a coaching, something to help people to experience what I've experienced, which is, the power that comes from going solo.
Absolutely. And we've got a link that we can pop up. Sydney's going to pop up.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
Do you want to explain that one?
Sure. So what I'm asking people to do is, if they're willing, I mean, this is not about selling anything. This is really, I'm curious to find out what is your travel dream, how much experience have you got of traveling solo, and what's stopping you, and what would it take to really be able to get you on the road. And if you're willing to have a chat about that, by going to that link, they will find a little bit more description of what I'm asking, but it's to sign up for just a 15-minute call where we can have a chat about those things that are stopping you. And as I say, it's about, you'll be helping me. I'd be really grateful to understand why people are not traveling solo, and it's women and men. But I truly think that so much personal growth can come through traveling solo, and so much learning about other cultures and about situations that stays with you through your whole life and helps you to make other choices along the way, which take a bit of courage. So that's one of the directions that I want to go in, and if people are willing to help me, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely fabulous. So that link is up there. So jump onto that and book a 15-minute slot with Pamela. And I have to say, as a solo traveller myself, not to the extent of yourself, Pamela, but having travelled on my own to Arizona, I like doing a little bit of a road trip. So it was Southern California through to Arizona in Sedona. The changes in myself that I have seen and that other people have seen since then have almost been, I won't say miraculous, but it's definitely been life-changing. And I think it's so important to do what your heart tells you to do and not what you think you should be doing as a human being in a Western society. So we do have to finish up in a couple of minutes. So if anyone does have any more questions, please pop them in and I'll read those out to Pamela. But I would say, what is the number one thing that you would tell somebody who, male or female, who has a dream of traveling anywhere it might be in the world, even in Australia? What is your number one tip? What is your number one thing you would tell them?
Trust yourself. I found the greatest difficulty, the greatest impediment for me was I didn't understand where this idea was coming from, and it was really perplexing to me. And I knew that it was going to have costs. I was making, it was like being at a crossroads, and there were consequences. I was in a career and would be giving up things. And then as soon as I started announcing it to people, they saw all the problems. And so I'm hearing all these voices that are telling me you're going to die. And you know, the first thing I had to do was to trust myself that this idea, this hankering was real, and that I should act to fulfill it, to take the risk. So that's my number one tip. Trust yourself.
I absolutely love it. Now, we will finish up there. Thank you so much, Pamela, for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Marnie. It's been great fun. Really, really enjoyed it myself too.
Excellent. Now, both of Pamela's books are available to purchase online through Dimmicks. Have a look on our website. We've got heaps of great authors and personalities coming up in our FrankTALK series with Frankston City Libraries. But again, thank you, Pamela. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much, Marnie. Bye.
Thanks so much.